The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host, Don McIntosh, and today we're glad to have Dr. Alan Handysides with us from the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
You know, I'm delighted that you're with us and could take the time here with Health for a Lifetime because you have such a global perspective. And one of the things we talk a lot about here on Health for a Lifetime, I've interviewed many guests, done over 100 or so programs at this point, and many of the times that we talk about nutrition, we talk about it from this narrow view of America or Western Europe or the developed countries. But you see things from a much larger perspective. And today we want to look at it from that global perspective. Is nutrition an important aspect of world health, and what do you see it from your bird's eye view there?
Well, when you consider that there are millions of children go to bed every night with empty tummies, who are hungry and perhaps complaining of nothing to eat, and then it becomes a really major problem, because I'm talking now not about the niceties of nutrition, but I'm talking about the absolute essential of nutrition, that which sustains, keeps alive, and allows us to live at all, not measuring the degree or quality of that life, but merely a quantity of life at all.
So in the world today, you know, talk about that. When you're talking about children that say, I just haven't had anything to eat. You know, we think about, oh, I didn't get to have my whatever the little nicety is. What is the big, what's the burden in terms of nutrition worldwide?
I think that it's almost a human right to have food. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anything more basic than food. And yet, it's, in my own experience, it's been a tragedy that I've seen sometimes hundreds, thousands of children dying of starvation. I remember in the late 80s when there were famines in Ethiopia going around and feeding maybe 3,000 to 5,000 children at one sitting. Mm-hmm. And they'd open their mouths like little birds as we'd pop in a little vitamin pill, and we'd be feeding them a gruel, which was a concoction of various grains and soybean proteins to try to save them from the jaws of death, literally from the jaws of death. Mm-hmm. We've seen pictures of starving children in likes of Time magazine, till the point that we've almost
become jaded.
Yeah, become jaded. We sort of said, don't show me another starving child. Mm-hmm. And yet we have the luxury of talking about whether we're going to eat a low-fat or a no-fat or this kind of fat diet. Mm-hmm. And there are children who are just starving. Now, you know, it's probably pointed out. I used to say to my kid, now eat the food up, clean your plate. There's millions of children starving. You know, and the kid would give you the quick response, well, name one, you know. My own kid would do that for me. It sort of sounds, you know, they think it's cool to be able to sort of catch their parents out, but it's a sign of how far we are removed from the reality of malnutrition in the world.
So per day, I mean, thousands of people dying from starvation?
You know, I don't have statistics right at my fingertips, and I should have had that to come and talk about this. But there are thousands of children dying of starvation. Mm-hmm. And when you add the malnourishment that they have to all the other illnesses, the complexity of illnesses, it becomes a really foundational deficiency. The foundation just isn't there to survive, to fight against the diarrheas, to fight against the tuberculosis, to fight the parasitic diseases, to even withstand HIV. You know, a child born HIV infected is only going to live 3 or 4 years in Africa.
Mm-hmm. So all these things, if you don't have anything to base it on, don't have basic food, you're in trouble. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, if you don't have food, you're not going to be able to develop physically. What are the things that you're going to
take an African child,
okay,
born in an African village. He's going to be brought up, depending on the affluence of his family, he's going to be brought up with brothers and sisters usually. By the time the mother gets pregnant again, which is by the time he's about a year of age, because that's roughly the time it will take, she'll get pregnant again. And by the time he's 21 months, 22 months old, a new baby appears. Now he's walking, but he's still being very much dependent on his mother's milk. Now the mother's milk is diverted to the new baby. And we see classically in that group a condition called kwashiorkor. Now that's hard to pronounce. Don't try it if you can't think. Kwashiorkor.
Kwashiorkor.
Kwashiorkor, yeah.
Okay.
Kwashiorkor is protein-calorie malnutrition. Mm-hmm. There just isn't enough, for instance, tyrosine in the protein content of the food. And these children, they're little black children, remember, they get orange hair because there isn't enough protein to form the melanin to make that beautiful jet black, shiny black hair that we're so used to seeing in a healthy child. Mm-hmm. They develop a little pot belly because the muscle tone is so poor, and their gut is gassy because it's poorly, it doesn't have enough absorptive capacity, so they're not absorbing that little bit that they have as well as they could. Their protein, the albumin in their blood decreases, so they start to get swelling around their ankles. They sit little objects of abject misery. Mm-hmm. Just poor, lethargic little children. Now, this is having an effect on their development. See, you take a normal 2-year-old, we say terrible twos. They're into everything, you know, they're going like they're gung-ho. Imagination,
right,
all that learning, the input, the sensory input, it's coming into their brain, you know, and yet these poor little kids are sitting there, and it's been documented that this malnutrition leads to a delay in the development, a delay in the cognitive development, the sensory development of these children. So it becomes, as it were, a shackle around them for the rest of their life.
Isn't it true, like the first 3 years, and one of your specialties is pediatrics, mm-hmm, and then mother-child type things. Isn't it true that the first 3 years are really foundational in terms of nutrition?
Foundational. For nutrition, cognitive development, physical development, adaptive behavior. I mean, you even measure the head size of a kid, you know. Mm-hmm. It reaches 4/5 of an adult size by the time the child's 2.5 years old. So the growth of the central nervous system, it's all there in those first 2.5, 3 years. And yet if we have deficiencies, be they protein, calorie, be they iodine deficiency, there's probably 900,000 people
goiters
with goiters and an iodine deficiency, borderline mental functioning because of iodine deficiency. These are major problems in the world.
Well, these kind of things, you know, just overwhelm me to hear about, but what can someone sitting in my chair, you know, with my perspective on things, what kind of things can you do to even impact that?
Well, I think that one of the things that we can do is support those agencies that are involved in helping in these countries. Mm-hmm. You know, the agencies are through the United Nations. We've got UNICEF, Save the Children. We've got non-governmental agencies, church group agencies. Mm-hmm. I think about our own church, our Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Right.
We have situated throughout the world multiple outposts. One through ADRA, which is the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, mm-hmm, and the other through the private hospitals of the church, and through the clinics of the church and the self-supporting missions of the church. All of these agencies are out there doing their part to battle against malnutrition. And the way we battle against malnutrition is education. We are very eager to train agricultural techniques so that they can grow their own food, become proficient.
Sufficient. Mm-hmm.
Also an education as to the value of different foods. You want to be sure that people make the best use of limited resources. Sometimes it's a pity to see Coca-Cola has proliferated into some of these countries, and they'd rather buy a bottle of Coca-Cola than they would buy a loaf of whole wheat bread. Or they might take an egg or something that would have a value to it other than
empty
few teaspoonfuls of sugar. Yeah. And so we need to educate as to what are the nutritional basics, a basic understanding of nutrition.
I think we have some pictures from the Adventist Development Relief Agency. We want to look at a couple of those. Right here, the first one. Why don't you help us with this one?
Well, look at this person here. This is an individual who's clearly malnourished. Very, very thin, a young person. Look at the face, the anxious look on that child's face. None of us really worry about where our next meal is coming from. Sometimes these children are scavengers on refuse dumps. Sometimes they're picking up a little piece here, a little piece there. We have the luxury of saying, I wonder if my diet's balanced. I wonder if I got enough vitamin B12 today. Now, my calcium requirements are 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. Do you think that that person's worried about any of those milligram percentages? He's just worried, is there going to be something to eat?
Probably has never thought of those things, but just the look I see is there is just one of, can I make it through?
Will I make it through the day?
And who are you that's taking this picture of me? Can you help me?
Yeah, what are you doing here? And what are we doing there? See? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. What are we doing there? And really we're supposed to be there to represent Jesus. You know, when Jesus saw the multitude, he had compassion upon them. He says to his disciples, set them down, I'm going to feed them. And they looked at him like, what is this? What kind of ministry is this? You know?
Right.
And yet he broke the bread, and he took the little fishes, and he broke it up, and he gave it to them. He used what was available, he used what was optimal at the time, and he used it to the greatest advantage because it was blessed of the Lord. And our endeavors for people, if they're done in love, will be blessed of the Lord. So I'm a great believer in the non-government organization and especially faith-based initiatives in this area.
So getting involved with your local church, your local community, however they're supporting these developing countries, and being aware yourself. You should educate maybe your children, your family, and the people that, hey, you know, there is a need to maybe sacrifice on this end so you can give more to help others that don't have anything.
That's right. And maybe, you know, to talk to our politicians, to talk to our representatives in government, that it's not only on issues of economics and trade that we are concerned, but that we are also concerned on these issues of equity, justice, and health for all. I think if we as a people can do that, we exert a gentle but subtle and definite pressure on our government representatives.
We're talking with Dr. Alan Handysides. He is the health and temperance leader of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He's a physician that's traveled around the world. We're talking about nutrition from a global perspective, and he's given us some good counsel about how we can become involved. Join us when we come back.
Have you found yourself wishing that you could shed a few pounds? Have you been on a diet for most of your life, but not found anything that will really keep the weight off? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then we have a solution for you that works. Dr. Hans Diehl and Dr. Eileen Ludington have written a marvelous booklet called Reversing Obesity Naturally, and we'd like to send it to you free of charge. Here's a medically sound approach successfully used by thousands who were able to eat more and lose weight permanently without feeling guilty or hungry through lifestyle medicine. Dr. Diehl and Dr. Ludington have been featured on 3ABN, and in this booklet, they present a sensible approach to eating, nutrition, and lifestyle changes that can help you prevent heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Call or write today for your free copy of Reversing Obesity Naturally, and you could be on your way to a healthier, happier you. It's absolutely free of charge, so call or write today.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Alan Handysides. He is the head physician for the Seventh-day Adventist Church World Health and Temperance Department. And you have that global perspective. We're talking about nutrition, malnutrition really we've been talking about mostly, and a huge problem with starvation, with all these different types of things around the world from that perspective that you see there and how we can be involved. But can we have malnutrition in a country that's known for its overabundance?
We certainly can, and we certainly do. Mal means bad, or poor. Bad is probably a good. Bad nutrition. So malnutrition is very prevalent here in the States as well. Of course, it's not a deficiency, it's an overabundance. Mm-hmm. In fact, I read a statistic that said that 58% of women are overweight, and that more than 35% of them are obese in the USA. And of course, the context of what I was reading was to do with the wave of type 2 diabetes that's sweeping the country. But overweight is certainly a problem, and it's because of our diet, which is so heavily laced with fat. 40% of the calories that the average American takes in come from fat. Mm. And if we were to look at the recommendations that are made even by our own government agencies and government health organizations, we'd find that that was recommended down to between 25 and 30%. And there are folks amongst us who would recommend even less. So you can see we're consuming far too much fat, probably in fast foods, and because we like the taste of it. But it's a slippery slope that we're sliding down to poor health, poor heart health, poor diabetes, all manner of problems, hypertension, insulin resistance, and the whole picture of that. Mm-hmm. We're slipping into that with our obesity.
So they say that what was it, 58% of the women in America are overweight.
Overweight.
And the other, 30-some percent
are obese.
Are obese.
Now you calculate that with a body mass index. Mm-hmm. Body mass index. For the listeners, a body mass index can be calculated by taking your weight in kilograms and dividing it by your height in meters squared. So it's a little difficult, but if you wrote that down, your weight in kilograms divided by your height squared. Now, when you do that, if you have, it should come out probably between, if you're ideal, about 22 to 25. Mm-hmm. When you get above 25 to 28, you're tending to be overweight. By the time you get over 30, you're obese. If the body mass index is over 30, you're definitely obese.
So you can forego some things and help world starvation?
Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be just great if we could transfer some of it from here over there? Yeah.
Let's go back to the other side of the picture. You know, many times on the television here, or from time to time, probably not as often as we should, we see relief efforts where maybe planes have gone over to Somalia and we're unloading huge bags of grain or this or that, relief packages. What should be in those packages? Should we have more meat in those packages, more different things? What should we put in those packages?
Well, of course, if we were to put in meat, we would be woefully misdirecting our energies, wouldn't we? We can get 18 times more protein from vegetable sources from a given acre of land than we do meat if we bring it through the beef chain. Mm-hmm. So we would normally, we'd like to say, well, it would be better to take that in the form of grain, legumes like beans, particularly soybeans are good, although we have to be sure that they know how to use the soybeans. I'm always reminded of that USAID care package that was sent to some forlorn-looking guy, and they were a box of Snickers, you know, and the guy had that look on his face, what am I supposed to do with this? We have to send things that are appropriate to the country. We can't send something that they've never seen or don't know how to handle.
Use.
Yeah.
So there needs to be education that goes along with
That's right, yeah.
Now, talking about undernutrition, is there like a single factor that we should be addressing when we talk about undernutrition globally?
It would be nice if there were one single factor, because if there were one single factor, we could address it. But it's a multi-factorial faceted problem, this undernutrition. Poverty certainly ranks in there as a very important...
the have-nots.
Have-nots, yeah. Then we have to think about government policy. Government policies in some of these countries are such that they don't encourage the transportation of food. We have to think about the role of men and women and the status of women. Sometimes, you know, the roles that we keep women into don't allow them to be able to be producing, say, food. If we're sending them carrying water for 5 hours,
okay,
you know, they don't have the time nor the energy to take care of other things. And then we, as developing nation, we need to look at the massive indebtedness of the third world. I really, you know, I'm a believer in hard work and reaping what you sow, but sometimes we have to look at the indebtedness that we have saddled the third world with and say, are we not just enslaving them with debt in a pit and a morass from which they'll never get out?
So get them started, education, all those different kind of things, and then they'll be pulling their own too at some point.
That's right. Of course, corruption in governments there are so many factors. It's a multifactorial problem.
I want to show another picture here from the Adventist Disaster Relief Agency that we have of some things being delivered. And I suppose that these are relief packages that are filled with what, do you suppose?
Well, they may be filled with bulgur wheat. Wheat is often sent to these developing countries. It could be that it's filled with milk powder, skim milk powder, which is a good source of protein. The problem with that is that many Africans are lactose intolerant. And I remember,
so they have another problem.
In my early days, I said, oh, we're just going to make all the porridge with the milk. And then they all had diarrhea. So I learned very quickly that you can't just impose solutions sometimes. But I would suspect that they're either bulgur wheat or maybe a soy flour preparation that can be used.
And ADRA does a lot of this. I notice there's a big response there. A lot of people that are coming, they're lining up. They do see value in it. But they probably do this around the world. But how, like you're saying, do you drop off a big bag of something that maybe they're not used to? Maybe they wouldn't know how to prepare it. Do they educate them along with it?
They would educate them how to use that. This is the relief part of ADRA's name.
Okay.
Remember, the development part
is developing the infrastructure.
Is to teach the man to catch a fish. He fishes forever. You give him a fish to eat, he eats it one day. So the development part is such an important aspect of this work.
And in your work, then, you see kind of diagnosing the problem in some ways, but this particular arm of the church comes in and picks up some of those parts that need to be carried through on them, water or food or this or that.
We see our hospitals primarily as treatment centers, but secondarily and vitally secondarily, they must be educational centers. And if they're not, they're failing in their mandate. They are to teach in their region, teach the people to grow good foods, to eat better foods, to make better use of what's available. We're not so worried about talking about saturated and unsaturated fats in this type of context. But we are interested in talking about sufficient calories and the balance and the variety and making full use of that which is available, not selling the beans to make a few bucks, but eating the beans to give them a better quality of life, to use the fruit that's growing on the trees, to plant fruit trees, take care of their children. You know, these are important things to teach.
As a physician, you've worked a lot with children, as a pediatrician, and then also with women's health issues. And I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but when we're talking, many times when we talk about starvation and these types of things, probably nothing would touch the heart more than talking about mothers and children. Do you have any special concerns concerning, like, for instance, pregnant women?
Well,
you've talked about children.
I'm so pleased that you asked that question, because on a question like this, it's been shown that folic acid, which is the vitamin found in green leafy vegetables, it's a B-complex vitamin, that when that vitamin is not present, the development of the baby may be wrong, may be poor, and you may get problems. So we need to encourage the use of green leafy vegetables, dark green leafy vegetables, by all pregnant mothers. I'm reminded where it says there in Psalm, I think it's 119, where David said, "You knew me when I was in my mother's womb. You saw me when I was fearfully and curiously wrought." I always like to think of the embryological twistings and turnings that were taking place. And David obviously knew about those sort of things. Maybe he'd seen them in a sheep or something. He said, "You knew me when I was curiously made." The Lord, you know, in his love and watch care over us, extends his compassion right into the womb. And we want to do that too, by having good diets, iron, folic acid, protein, adequate calories, so that these babies can, from the very conception and inception of their life, they can grow properly.
So green leafy vegetables, you know, when I was taking state board examinations many years ago for nursing, I knew that was one of the choices I had on my multiple choice. If I put that, I'd always be right. You can't go wrong with green leafy vegetables. We've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to talk about, ask you a question, you know, about human rights as it relates to undernutrition, and then maybe the spiritual aspects of this from your perspective and from where you're trying to impact change. Would you care to comment on that as we close?
Yeah. Well, I think we mentioned human rights. We did touch on food as being a basic human right. And I think as individuals, you know, it was Cain, he'd killed Abel, his brother, and God said, "His blood is crying out to me." And Cain's response was, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And I think that we are in danger sometimes of feasting off the land and not being worried about others. And I think God made us all of one flesh. We're all made of one blood. He loves us all just the same. And if we are to be his sons and his daughters, we will be our brother's keepers. We will have concern. And we will see to it that we nurture the rights of children to food and nourishment, clothing, shelter. These are very basic human rights.
So we need to be thinking about ways we can get involved now.
We need to be thinking how we can.
When that mission offering comes around, when that Adventist disaster relief offering, or whatever the churches that you're involved in or network, to get involved and say, "Hey, I want to be involved in that."
The good book says it's more blessed to give than to receive. And I'd like for our listeners to receive that blessing.
We've been talking with Dr. Alan Handysides. We've been talking about world nutrition, and we hope that today's program will be a blessing to you. We're thankful for the Adventist Development Relief Agency and the pictures they've provided for today.